Hey, everybody. Nathan Shields here. My friend Sean Miller is joining me today for this Facebook group video that we thought we'd do because Sean came up with some pretty succinct ideas on how to train PT owners to generate job descriptions, handbooks, training manuals, inspection lists, you name it. And it was so simple. When he presented it to me, I was like, oh man, we got to share that. This is really easy. And I wish I had my hands on this simple knowledge back in the day. I knew kind of how to do it, but wasn't sure how to implement it. Nonetheless, Sean breaks it down really easily. So Sean, thanks for sharing this with us today. I'm going to let you take over from here, share your screen and kind of present to me or present to the group what you presented to me, so we can talk a little bit about generating job descriptions really quickly.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. And I'm real excited to be able to share this with you. I think it's great information that I know is super valuable for me as I grew my practices and know it's been helping some of the clients I've been working with as well. So
Yeah.
Let me share my screen with you. So essentially what we're talking about is building job descriptions and handbooks. I'll reference the handbooks probably as playbooks because I'm a huge sports guy. I think a playbook is a little more understandable. A lot of times as you think of a quarterback or a wide receiver, someone who has a playbook, it's like, how do I do these plays in order to be successful and score and win the game? So your handbooks in our minds are the playbooks and how to be successful in your job and how to win the game essentially. A great book that I love and reference a lot of times that I read a long time ago was called E-Myth Revisited. And I'm sure a lot of your Facebook group and listeners have read this. If not, I highly recommend reading it. It's a book by Michael Gerber. But the premise of the book is essentially it's aimed at giving businesses to give its owners more freedom that produces consistent and predictable results. And he talks about how to create that within your business. And that really inspired me of like, how do I do this in a successful physical therapy office? You know, we see it in companies like McDonald's or in factories. You know, they get the same consistent result. It's very predictable. You know, where you go, you get the same thing. And it's like, how do I get that within my physical therapy practice? And especially if I have multiple physical therapy practices, how do I make sure that it's the same? And most importantly, in my mind, how do I create freedom for myself? And I found by creating these playbooks and understanding how to do it was a huge component in being able to do that essentially. So how do you create this for your practice? You create this by developing your successful systems and processes that are reproducible and consistent. So, and this is done by creation of what we call job descriptions a lot of times, or handbooks that outline how an employee achieves this for their specific job. Sometimes we're getting our job descriptions to be too detailed or too actually not detailed enough, right? But they're not really describing how to be successful and how to reproduce the same product over a consistent period of time.
Mm-hmm.
But once you have these handbooks, you then train and educate all your employees on the handbook that's specific to their job title. And then that eliminates any room for how to do the job and how to be successful in doing the job essentially.
Well, that's the cool thing about it is it doesn't become person dependent at that time. We're generating systems now you can take anybody, plug them in, train them on the system, and expect reproducible results.
Yeah, you got it. Exactly. And really, we learned over a period of time, I really didn't want someone sometimes with experience in, say, a receptionist or as an aide or tech. I just wanted someone who I knew was a capable, someone who could get things done. I can train them how to do it. I just need someone who can be responsible and get it done, you know?
Exactly.
Because you have how you want it to get done. And that's the key is you don't want someone coming in doing it how they want to do it. You want it done how you know is successful, you know, and how to get the outcome you're looking for.
That's right, for sure.
So I want to just talk about how to create these real simply, because sometimes it can be very confusing. And essentially when you're creating these playbooks or handbooks for your company, it's kind of three components. One is, what is the job title? Two is you want to list all of the successful actions that you have to do for this job title. And I highlight successful actions because there are a lot of actions you may do, but you really want to list the successful actions, the one that gets you what you're looking for. And then number three, and this is really important, is you need to list the outcome you get from this. Sometimes the outcome is better known as the product, what you're trying to get out of this job title, essentially. And
Mhm.
what's great about it is when you've listed the outcome or the product, you now have a stat for that employee. And that stat can then be measured so that they, not you, well, you do it as well, but it's really meant for them. They can track how well they're doing at their job. And if that stat is low, it's like, okay, well, what am I not doing of the successful actions to get where I need to be, essentially?
So this
So
is cool. It's really powerful because now you can present this to the front desk. You can present it to the physical therapist, and it's going to say, "Here's your job title. Here are the successful actions that allow you to win and reproduce successful products, and this is how we measure the ability to reproduce these systems."
exactly.
So that's what a basic handbook looks like.
The basic handbook. This is a basic 1, 2, 3 step way to look at it. And then what I want to run through here is just real briefly, how do you kind of go through this process and create a more in-depth playbook or handbook for your company?
For sure.
So something to consider when you first do this is too often we list the job title and then we try to come up with all the successful actions of that job title. And really the way to think about it is you first need to think of what is the outcome or product of that job title, not the successful actions. So what are you trying to achieve with this job?
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm a receptionist, what am I trying to achieve? If I'm a physical therapist, what am I trying to achieve? What is the outcome that I am looking for? So the first thing I always tell people is list the job title, but then list the outcome that you want out of that, essentially.
Yeah, because you could say with the front desk, um, of course, is their position, and then you list all the things related to the front desk. And when you do that, almost everything carries the same weight. Whereas when you focus on the product first, then you know where to focus most of your energies. Because a front desk person could think that simply checking benefits is the product, when that is only such a small portion of what they do to get to the final product. It's very important to name that product first, and then go back and develop what it takes to get that product.
Exactly. And you may actually create a to-do list and then realize there's something in that to-do list that has nothing to do with the product or the outcome. And then the question is why are they doing that? They should only be doing things that give them the outcome or the product,
Yeah, totally.
Like if you've got your receptionist folding towels in the back, does that really give you the outcome that you want out of your receptionist? It may, but it may not as well. Maybe that's actually someone else's job,
Sure.
So it helps clarify that as well. So one thing to think about with this is, we talked about this, is the outcome is the product of each position. So sometimes it's best to understand what a product is. A product is something that's finished with high quality service in the hands of the consumer as an exchange for something of value. If you can't exchange it, then it's not a product. In other words, if a patient comes in and they don't pay their copay, that's not complete. We have to complete the full service to get the full product, essentially. And so we want that to be part of that process. A patient comes in, they pay their copay, and now their insurance has been verified and they're ready to be seen by the physical therapist. Until those other steps happen, they're really not ready to be seen by the physical therapist. So we want to make sure we understand what that product is.
Yeah, the exchange goes both ways. We provide the service, but then they also have to exchange and pay the copay, the deductible, whatever.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, you got it. So an example, we're talking about the receptionist quite a bit here, but let's just look at it further. The title is a receptionist. So then you can see I've got successful actions, but then it's blank. And really the outcome is I want all my patients to arrive to all their prescribed appointments with payment in full. So now that I understand this is what I want my receptionist to give me to produce, now I go back through and I start listing all of these successful actions that gives me this outcome. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
So a good example of this, if we look at this again, is I just tell people, create a quick bullet point list. Like 1, answer the phone. They have to answer the phone to be able to schedule the patient. Enter the patient information to the EMR system. Collect their copay or co-insurance or deductible. Keep your area clean and organized. Obtain authorizations. So you want to go through and list everything that makes that company successful in your position. Like you could say, keep the area clean and organized. Well, what's that got to do with the patient showing up? Well, if it's not a very clean, organized place, people may think poorly of your facilities, and so they may not come back.
Sure.
So that's part of their successful action to make sure that takes place in the front office, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So
Gotcha.
once I have this, right, I then go through and I create a detailed explanation of each of those bullet points. So we can see here, one of the examples was answer the phone. Well, how do I answer the phone? The way Nathan answers the phone would be different than how I might answer the phone. And so I want to write down the successful way that I think the phone should be answered within my company. So
Mm-hmm.
then I spell out exactly how to answer the phone. Answer phones and direct calls where to as needed or handle as you can. Always answer with proper greeting. Thanks for calling blank physical therapy. This is Sean. How can I help you?
Sure.
Always answer the phone within 3 rings. You'd be amazed how many times the phone would just keep ringing forever. But if they know it's 3 rings, they'll hear that and they'll get it within the third ring.
Yeah.
You know, so it's spelling out now exactly how to do all the bullet point list items that you've created, essentially.
And I love that you didn't get into the details first. First, just create the bullet points, knock them out. These are the things that they do, and then come back around some other time. And it doesn't even have to be the same day, right? Come
No.
back around another time and start writing down exactly what it takes to answer the phone correctly in different situations, and you name it. And that is something that you could also pass on to like an employee that is doing really well in their position. So you could say, hey, so I'm trying to put together some job descriptions. I want to have a training and job description for answering the phone. Would you mind taking 15 minutes and write down everything you know about answering the phone properly? And so you don't have to do it at that point, right? You could just give them a task that they do and they return it back to you, and then you can edit, modify, get feedback, you name it after that.
No, in fact, that's one thing I recommend is find who is your rock star in this position and ask them to create the to-do list, the successful actions list.
Yeah.
And create that list for you. And then sit down with them and go, okay, how do we answer the phone? And have them put that all together for you.
Yeah.
Your rock star and have them create it for you. Because if they're a rock star at it, that means they're doing the successful action. What are they doing? So you can put it on paper and then share it with the ones that aren't as successful as they are.
Totally.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right on, you're spot on. This is a process that takes time. And the best thing to do first is to simplify it by creating the title, the outcome, and then just create the bullet point list like we have listed here. And then come back and write the detail of each of these steps and processes.
Right.
I will say, just as a helpful hint too, is when you write out the details of how to answer the phone, you can be too detailed, right? Always answer the phone picking up the receiver with your right hand, placing it to your right ear, that's too much detail, right?
Yeah.
It's written at like a 4th to 5th grade level of understanding, like we know what it means to answer the phone. I don't need to tell you to use your right hand, just pick the phone up and answer it,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So be careful not to be too detailed as well.
Mm-hmm.
So now what? So once you've done this, you go back through and you've created all these successful actions of how to do their job, essentially. You then create this handbook to train all the employees like we talked about. And you ensure that everyone's trained properly so that they're all doing the same successful processes. Mm-hmm. And now they all have a stat that tells them if they're being successful. And if the stat gets out of where it should be, you just go back to what successful process are you not doing to obtain that stat? Mm-hmm. And it puts yourself back in again.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother topic of discussion, how to manage people with that and how to go through that process. But you got to have these in place to be able to go there first.
Yeah, it's really cool that you talk about products because it forces the owner to really focus on what exactly do they want out of that position. Because the next step, like you're saying, is now you talk about the product, exactly what you want from that position. What are the stats related to it? And since we're talking about the front desk, when you say everyone comes for their appointed time and pays for the services on time, well, now your 2 stats are arrival rate and over-the-counter collections. And those are like the 2 main things that they do. Everything else is kind of a sub-product, if you will, exactly. To whether it's conversion rates and that kind of stuff, depending on how you describe the product, right? But now you have your KPIs that you can measure on a routine basis and measure their performance going forward.
Exactly. No, you're spot on. Everybody should have one main stat and then sub-stats that obtain that main stat, essentially what we're talking about.
And then, like you said, you can take those bullet points and now cut and paste those bullet points into another form and put some some spaces next to it, and now you have your training checklist,
Yeah.
essentially, right? So you could say, okay, when we train this person, we need to train them to answer the phone.
Yep.
And when you've done that according to these systems, then you check the box and data, get their initials, that kind of stuff. And now you have your training checklist. And to go further, when they aren't answering the phone well, you can pull that out again and say, okay, are you answering it within 3 rings? Are you saying this? And you can observe and inspect and all that kind of stuff to see if they're performing things well.
Yep, exactly.
That's awesome.
And once you have all this in place, you've now established your system and your processes that are successful. And that produces high producing employees who are doing their job on a consistent basis, like Michael Gerber suggested in eMyth.
Yeah.
That then frees up your time because people know how to do their job and they know how to correct themselves when they're not doing their job properly.
Well, and it also gives you, the owner, the ability to go in and say, something's wrong here. Our arrival rate is poor. Let's go back through the training manuals or the job description and see what's missing. So it allows them to correct themselves, or you could say, hey, go through, if you trust them, go through the manual yourself and see what you're doing wrong and let me know what it is. Or you could have the supervisor or yourself now go and sit down and do it with them. And that makes it so much simpler.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it makes it so much more simpler. And it keeps the employee from like they're doing something wrong, right? It's just like, hey, something's out, let's figure out together and let's get it back together again,
Yeah, you almost made it too simple here, dude. But I think people have to realize that this takes a lot of time. The first part, you made it so simple, may not take so much time to come out with your job titles and the product and the bullet points of the successful actions might not be so quick, but then to refine it over time, it's a collaborative effort, and it could take months, and it will evolve over the years too, especially as you use it.
Yep, it changes too, right? Like, when we first started, we didn't have text reminders for patient appointments, and now we did. So that's a successful action we had to put into the book, make sure patients are signed up for text reminders for their appointments, So, and then you'll hire somebody who comes in with some new ideas and they try them out and they're super successful. And you're like, well, what was that? And you put that in. And so you do have to modify it over time, but initially it does take time. But the first step is just start, create something simple, and then don't worry if it's not perfect the first time or two you put it out there, just start getting it put together. And I like your point that you brought up, and that is involve your staff to have them help you create it, because then they feel like they're part of the process as well. Yeah. And it creates a lot better buy-in because it's not you, it's your team creating it together.
Yeah. Well, and I think you made it abundantly clear that you don't give these homework assignments, if you will, to people who don't perform well or or you're having troubles with. Yeah, you give these to the people who are high performers.
Exactly. You got it.
Well, cool. Like I said, you made it so simple, and there's more to it. If people wanted to talk to you more about this, how do they get in touch with you, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, they can always reach out to me if they're on Facebook through the Facebook group, or even my email, which is samiller8020@gmail.com. Those are simple ways to reach out to me. More than happy to have conversations on how to go further and how to create these in more depth and help you get where you need to be.
Well, I like how your email is samiller8020. Because this is what we're doing right here. This is 20% of the work that gives us 80% of the results, right?
It is. I'm a big believer in 80-20, and you're spot on. This is one of the 20s.
Cool, man. Thanks.